Hey friends, welcome to Health and Fitness The Truth. I'm Christopher McGee. Let's look at the sumo deadlift today. Let's get it done. Alright guys, so we've already done a video on deadlifts. Sumo deadlifts are primarily different in a few things. You tend to have a more upright torso. Your hands are inside where your legs go. Usually on a deadlift, your knees are inside where your hands are, but now on a sumo deadlift, your hands are gonna be inside where your legs go. Alright? So let's check this out. Got it on the ledge. We've talked about this before, but I'll just say it again. Even though the deadlift and the sumo deadlift both start from the ground, I just like to put the bar on the ledge so that it's easier to put the plate weights on because it's just a little bit more of a hassle to put, forget it.
If you know it, you know it.
I'll edit it perfectly, you'll see.
Okay, ready when you are.
It's where I want it on the ledge. I'm gonna face the rack. It does start on the ground, so let's get it off its ledge with good form. I want good hip hinge mechanics. Even when I'm not doing the exercise, technically, I want good hip hinge mechanics all the time. If I drop a pencil on the ground, I want good hip hinge mechanics. And the heavier the weight is you're picking up, the more important that gets. All right, this starts on the ground. Now, for a typical deadlift, you'd have your feet about shoulder width apart, pointed straight forward or maybe a little bit wide. And on the sumo deadlift, you're gonna take them quite a bit wider, okay? And it's gonna be a little bit different for everyone in terms of where your feet land on the bar, but your heels should be at or outside your shoulder width, and your toes pointed out from there. I'm gonna bring this pretty far in, and like I said, the hands are inside the knees on a sumo deadlift. Dropping, and from here, I'm gonna drop my hips and come quite upright. Now I need to make sure that as I drive off the ground, my knees stay pointed in the same direction that my toes are. If my toes are wide and I allow my knees to come in, it looks awful and it feels awful and it is awful for the long-term health and wellness of your knees, okay? And your hips. So, I wanna make sure that I keep my knees driving in the same direction as my toes. Come down here. Whether I've got a regular grip or a switch grip won't matter a whole lot as far as the efficacy of the deadlift, but I do want to drop my hips and I want to brace myself on this bar instead of just jerking up. I don't want to get there, have no force applied on the bar, and then go from like leaning into the bar to trying to jerk it up. This is another slow and controlled movement. So I get down here, okay? Right there. That's your sumo deadlift, okay? And just like any other lift, especially with the barbell, the whole time I went through that movement, I wanted my shoulders back and down, which is difficult anytime you're doing a lift where the weight is in front of you and your weight you're manipulating is displaced in front of you. Your shoulders will tend to round forward toward it. That would be natural. Weightlifting isn't about what your body naturally falls to. It's about the discipline of learning good alignment. Your body doesn't naturally fall into that discipline. We teach it. Okay, so again, I'll just do normal grip, hands inside where my knees are, keep my knees pointed out, drop my hips, brace a bit, shoulders back and down. There you go. One good way to gauge whether or not your feet are wide enough is how far over your toes, if at all, your knees go at the bottom of your deadlift. What you want is truly perpendicular to the ground shins. Now that's a common cue for squats or deadlifts, but it's one of those cues that are attempts at overcorrecting in order to get the right thing to happen, right? If I squat and my feet are where they ought to be for a squat, and I come down, look, like my knees aren't going far over my toes, but there's no way you can get your shins totally vertical. If your shins are totally vertical, then you fall back. But the fact that you are externally rotating your hips means that your weight is gonna drop more down the center of where your base is, where your feet are, which means we can truly have our shins be perpendicular to the ground at the bottom of this hinge. That is how you gauge where your feet ought to go. And that's why it's different for everyone, right? I can't just tell you, put your feet all the way to the ends of the plate weights. Some dudes are just gonna be really long-legged and that will be appropriate, but for some people it might be, you know, where this little non-scored part of the bar is. Someone with shorter legs, but for me, you know, that's somewhere in the middle. Bam, right there. Okay, sumo deadlifts. Alright guys, let's check out some prime movers and their origin and attachment points. So sumo deadlifts prime movers are just the same as a regular deadlift's prime movers. You're looking at glutes and quads. Hamstrings are there. They do a little bit, but some people argue that they're a prime mover. It seems to me they're kind of along for the ride. This movement could be done without hamstrings. They could be done with simply glutes and quads. Hamstrings would be necessary in order to stabilize things, but not so much in order to get the job done of the movement. That's really all you're looking at. Now, in previous deadlift videos, I've talked about how I have named some muscles in the lower back as prime movers, and I need to rescind those statements. They are stabilizers. So I've talked about quadratus lumborum, which sits right here in the lower segment of your erector spinae, being prime movers. But the fact that the hip hinge happens not here, but here, the fact that that hip hinge moves the entire pelvis in line with the spine instead of the spine moving forward at the pelvis, takes those things out as prime movers. They are stabilizers. So let's just really quick look at the origin insertion on the glutes. Your origin point is along the back, the posterior aspect of this iliac crest into the sacral area, and it pulls out over here onto the lateral neck of the femur, okay? And quads have 4 branches, as we know, hence the name quads. Okay, and they all insert by passing over the patella or kneecap and inserting on the tibial tuberosity just below it. Medially, we have vastus medialis, which originates back here towards the lesser trochanter and comes down to the same shared insertion point. Okay, then we've got rectus femoris, same insertion point, the only of the 4 branches to cross this joint articulation, and it inserts on the bottom of the iliac crest here. Vastus intermedius, which sits deep to the other 3 of the quad branches, originates off the shaft of the bone, okay, and just comes right down, same insertion point. And then vastus lateralis comes off the greater trochanter here and comes down to the same insertion point of the tibial tuberosity. Really, the main prime movers here are your glutes and your quads. Hamstrings are kind of along for the ride, in my opinion. Ozai is now a Dodgers fan, as he should be, and there you go. Thanks, Ozai. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hey, if you have any friends that lift, go ahead and share these videos with them. If you've got some friends who deadlift all the time, but don't know about the sumo deadlift and the different variances that it offers, go and share this with them. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you know whenever I pop up with another video. It's every Monday and Friday afternoon, so twice a week I'm coming out with more good education. You can follow me on Instagram at Health Fitness Truth. I'm trying to pump out some good education on there all the time too. We'll see you guys in the next video.